Hello and welcome back to Transfer Preview. It's back because January is just around the corner in just a couple of weeks. Basically to explain, on the weeks where there isn't UCL review, we'll be doing a transfer preview ahead of the January window because Stat Wars is all sort of coming to an end. Pat is in the final, which goes out on Saturday. We'll then do the playoffs to see who gets into the league to replace Hamel and Sonny, and then we'll start again in January. But welcome back to Transfer Preview, and our first topic of conversation is Atletico Madrid, who supposedly want Timo Werner, Pat.
Yeah, this is a really meaty one. Obviously, Diego Costa could be on his way out the door. Rumours that he'd go to Flamengo. And according to Spanish radio station Cope, Atletico Madrid have made RB Leipzig superstar Timo Werner their #1 striking target. Now, their lead presenter, Antonio Ruiz, claims that the 23-year-old is interested in a move which could happen in January or next summer. But his contract runs till 2023, so clearly the clubs will have to strike an agreement. According to Kicker, though, if we believe this, and this is something we talk about as if it's fact, but it is kind of only a thing we hear from one German paper. The 29-time capped German did sign a new deal last summer, which contains a release clause of 30 million euros.
Oh, what a bargain.
It's so little. And if you think that if you could sell like a Diego Costa or, I don't know, Vitolo or someone they don't particularly care about, then they're easily going to be able to pay for that without even dipping into their reserves. Anyway, it's obviously Diego Costa's poor form and his injuries which have seen rumours of this move come to the fore. Costa's actually got a herniated cervical disc right now, which requires surgery and will keep him out until February.
Nasty.
However, 2 goals in 15 appearances in 1920.
Probably needed replacing anyway. We all got a bit excited when that performance against Real Madrid in pre-season, and it looks like he's reverted back to the norm.
Yeah, I think that he's pretty much done at the top level. But Timo Werner is... Everyone thinks Timo Werner's good, but just how good this season is kind of shocking.
Yeah, it's actually frightening when you think about it. So the former Stuttgart man has 15 goals and 6 assists in 18 League and Champions League appearances. And this form is just no fluke as well. He's been doing this on a consistent basis since his €10 million deal, which took him from Stuttgart to RB Leipzig in June 2016. He's contributed 88 league goals in 106 appearances, earned international recognition at that time, and become one of the most feared strikers on the planet. In Europe, only Immobile with 17 and Lewandowski with 16 has scored more than his 13 league goals. And it's not like he's getting particularly lucky. Things aren't just falling from either. He's creating a lot, he's finishing a lot, he can play across the front line, he can play on the left to good effect. He's done that for Germany in World Cups, etc. He's actually operating at 1.33 expected goals and assists per 90, a figure which is only topped by Milik and Mbappe this term, who have both played significantly lower minutes. The issue here, though, is whether he would join Atleti from a personal point of view. So RB Leipzig are just a point off Borussia Mönchengladbach at the time of writing, and they've scored 36 league goals, a figure only topped by Man City with 43 in Europe's top 5 leagues. In contrast, Atleti struggling in front of goal. They've only scored 16 in 15 games, which is fewer than 17th placed Alaves, and only average 11.9 shots per game to Leipzig's 15.3. So it would be a real culture shift for the young German. And unsurprisingly, with this shot numbers for Atleti, they've only scored more than once in 6 of their 20 games in 1920 in all competitions, which just goes to show how much Simeone's side are struggling in front of goal. But they have with this current predicament they're in, they do have some backups if this Werner deal doesn't go through, because you imagine clubs like Man United, Liverpool are once going to come looking for Werner as well. So AS claim that Simeone are also considering Cavani, who has played just over 320 Ligue 1 minutes this term. Of course, that's been injury factored at times as well, but has recently lost his place to Icardi. They're also looking at Piontek, who has 4 goals in 13 appearances this campaign, so he's been struggling somewhat at AC Milan. And Andrea Bellotti, who has 57 goals in his last 117 Serie A appearances for Torino. But there's question marks about whether he'd be able to do it at a European super club. I'm not sure whether I see this move happening from a personal point of view of Werner, but Pat, from Atletico Madrid's perspective, if they can get this deal done, surely they need to get on this immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely try and nail this one down straight away, but I just don't think he'll go there. I think that Real Madrid don't seem to fancy Jovic, but Benzema, while he's been great this year, he's not going to live forever, so I think they're going to have to get a striker in. Arsenal could feasibly see Aubameyang out the door next year. Man United will be looking for another forward. Even Juventus might need an out-and-out striker with Higuain and Ronaldo aging out. Like, there are so many places he could go. And of course, Bayern Munich. who, yes, they brought in Jan Fita up, but he's not ready to lead the line yet.
He's only 19, isn't he?
And Lewandowski's having the season of his life, but it might be he has the season of his life, and that kind of sees his energy start to ebb as he gets into his deep into his 30s. So I don't know if I even want to see it, man, just because they're not that fun to watch in attack.
No, I totally agree. I think Atletico Madrid, out of all the European super clubs, probably am most glad that I'm not a supporter of them. I think they do slightly bore me to death at times. But guys, we want to hear from you. Do you think Atleti could get this deal done? And if they don't, should they go for Cavani, Belotti or Piontek? Vote in the poll above, and let's move on to our next story.
Just before we get into our next section, make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you weren't subscribed already, and hit that notification bell to never miss a video. More great content dropping over the Christmas period and into January as transfers really get going. But moving on to our next move, and it's Felipe Coutinho, who wants his switch to Bayern Munich to be made permanent.
Yes, the 27-year-old Brazilian joined the 29-time German champions after struggling somewhat on his 18-month spell in Catalonia. He actually contributed 0.4 goals per league game across his time there, but Valverde only trusted him to start 22 La Liga matches in 18-19, with 8 Barcelona players playing more. But since his move to Germany, Coutinho has rediscovered his sort of joie de vivre somewhat, starting 12 of the club's 18 League and Champions League games, contributing 8 goals in the process. And when asked about his future beyond this season, Coutinho told the Daily Mail, "I'm very comfortable, I plan to stay here for a year and I'm focused on my time here. If everything fits, then I'd love to stay." He's actually available. They can make this loan spell permanent for 102 million euros in the summer. Would this money be well spent by Bayern Munich, Pat? I mean, he seems like he's adapted pretty well there.
He has adapted very well, but that is an awful lot of money. However, they spent so much on this initial loan that you kind of feel like they were planning to pay that money down the road. And they're really getting the most out of him by just playing him in his preferred position. Obviously, he played kind of on the wing and he played in a 3-man midfield at Barcelona, but 83% of his games so far this year have come in the number 10 spot.
Where he wants to be.
And he's really rewarding that faith. 6 goal contributions in 12 Bundesliga appearances. Doesn't sound amazing, but only 8 of those were starts. And he only had 7 goal involvements in 34 appearances last season, so it was a pretty low ceiling to come up from. But under the hood, the numbers are actually tremendous. So shots are up, key passes are up. He's gone from taking and assisting 4.4 shots a game to taking and assisting 5.3 shots a game. And his XG has gone from 0.53 per 90 last season to 0.74.
Which is excellent for a sort of elite striker.
It's unbelievable. And he's still, you know, dribbling a decent amount as well, a couple of dribbles a game, of course. He's used to pressing in that system too. And Thomas Muller's now 30. So to have Coutinho as his long-term replacement and probably upgrade does seem like it would be, you know, pretty good timing. Though that said, Muller has got 9 goal involvements in 700 league minutes this term, so pretty tidy from him. I don't know, it feels like Barcelona are obviously going to be happy to let him go. They brought in Griezmann, they still need to pay off some stadium fees, there's still talk about Ansu Fati. The only real question is whether Bayern and potentially their next manager might want to make better use of 100 mil, because you do think, you know, you hear rumours about them wanting Werner or Kai Havertz, and you think...
Or Leroy Sané.
Yeah, and you think, well, maybe, I mean, if I could get Leroy Sané for 150 mil, I'd rather spend the money on that than Coutinho. What do you reckon?
I don't know whether just because it's... I feel like the Leroy Sané deal is actually going to be very difficult to complete because Man City are going to be pretty reluctant to let him go. And seeing as Coutinho's adapted well there, he's only 27. He's got at least 5 more years at the top. 102 million. It is a lot of money, but I feel like it's probably money well spent in the longer term. And Lewandowski seems like he can go on for another 2 years. So they're basically hedging it against a winger in next summer or Coutinho. And in my book, I go with Coutinho, especially with Coman and Gnabry in particular playing so well this campaign. Sure. So it's going to be absolutely fascinating. But it seems like Hansi Flick is going to have the interim job for quite a bit longer. Obviously a disappointing result of the weekend against Bayer Leverkusen, but up to then was playing superbly well. So big decisions in the incoming Bayern bosses in trade for next summer. But what do you guys think they should do? Should they go for Coutinho? Should they go for Sané, Havertz, or prioritise an out-and-out 9 to replace Lewandowski? Let us know in the comments below, and let's move on to our next story. And our headline story, which brought you to this video. Welcome aboard. If it's your first time, as Pat said before, please subscribe. It's Real Madrid who are preparing a bid for Kalidou Coulibaly.
Yes, this comes courtesy of Calcio Mercato. According to their report, Real Real Madrid view the 28-year-old Senegalese international as a long-term replacement for 33-year-old Sergio Ramos, whose contract expires at the end of next season. Now, they will have to go some to get him out of Naples. Only last month, Napoli president Aurelio De Laurentiis, who is kind of at war with his squad at the moment, admitted, "I love Koulibaly the man, so I refused 105 million euros for him. But a time will come when I'll have to sell him." I mean, that time kind of is now, given his age, I think. And obviously, Man United have been linked with the former Genk defender, price tag in the region of 100 mil. Like, that's very good money for a guy of his age, even taking into account how good he is and what a loss it would be. And Napoli are not quite as appealing a place to be as they have been in the past. That price could come down a bit if they fail to qualify for the Champions League, which at the moment is very much on the cards. They're 8 points off fourth place Cagliari. They failed to win any of their last 8 matches in all competitions, with 6 draws and 2 losses. Ancelotti on the rocks there, I think. So it looks like Dries Mertens could potentially go out to Inter Milan in January, either on a pre-contract or permanently. Insigne and Fabian Ruiz are being linked with exits. Would De Laurentiis really want to let Coulibaly go as well? You'd think he'd want to hold on to at least a couple of these guys.
Yeah, definitely. But he does seem pretty mentally unstable at the moment, so I wouldn't bet against anything. But if Coulibaly was to go to Real Madrid, I think he'd be an absolutely fantastic addition. He's played at least 33 Serie A games in 3 of the last 4 campaigns, so he's got no sort of long-standing injury issues. And he's developed into one of the most sought-after centre-backs in the world. So in 1920, he's played 12 Serie A games. He's averaged 4 tackles and interceptions with a 77% tackle success rate. For context, that's higher than Van Dijk managed last year for Liverpool. He's very good in the air. He wins about 60% of his aerial duels. Very good long-range passer, about 70 passes per game with about an 89% pass accuracy, which is all very similar to the numbers that Ramos puts up at Real Madrid this year, where he's played 14 La Liga games. He's averaging slightly fewer tackles and interceptions and slightly worse tackle success rate, but he's averaging more long balls and a slightly better pass accuracy. So they're pretty like for like. And I think Ramos, slightly maybe the more hot-headed of the two, maybe the more front-foot defender, but Kalidou Koulibaly, we've seen in the last 12 months or so, can literally do everything. He picks up extraordinary positions in both boxes. And he certainly would be up for an upgrade potentially defensively. So Napoli are allowing 13.1 shots per game and have the 8th best defence according to expected goals against, which is quite a drop-off from the last few years. And they've conceded 18 league goals already. It took them until the 2nd of February to reach this tally in 18-19. Real Madrid, in contrast, allow 8.5 shots per game. They've got the 2nd best defence according to expected goals against, behind Atletico Madrid. And they've conceded 11 goals in 14 league games. 8 fewer than they did at this stage last season, when I believe they were still under Lopetegui, just about. Yeah. And if Real Madrid could get this done, it would seem like a fantastic signing, but it would heap more question marks on the future of sort of Eder Militao, who has struggled to consistently break into that starting lineup. But if they had, Ramos, Varane, Militao, Koulibaly, that's pretty much the best roster in world football, or as close to. And you made the very good point, Pat, they're pretty well stocked in fullback areas too. Yeah,
well, they've obviously got Odriozola and Carvajal on the right, and Hakimi is technically a right back, but has been playing on the left, or played on the left last season, kind of back on the right this year. Then, of course, they've got Reguilón, who's out on loan at Sevilla. They've got Marcelo, who's still useful, and Ferland Mendy. So, I mean, the talent across that back line is absolutely incredible. And I've got to say, despite, the Champions League wins, I actually think that Zidane's performance so far this season is the most impressive of his managerial tenure. Like, I've never really rated him, but this season I think he's managed to fix the midfield pretty much with the addition of Valverde, who doesn't look like a spectacular talent, but it works, and they look like definite title challengers. So, I don't know. I personally don't think I'd spend the money here, but if they do, why not? You're Real Madrid. Who cares?
Fair enough. Let's move on to presenter picks. So this, our final section of the show, is called presenter picks. And this week we are choosing 2 moves that we would like to see happen in January. We'll integrate this with some suggestions from you guys in future weeks. But for this week, we're setting the agenda. And Pat, who are you bringing to the table?
I've got a guy called Dejan Kulusevski. You might have seen him profiled on StatsBomb, but I profiled him in an 11 or a 10, I don't remember.
You got him first.
A month or so ago. He's a 19-year-old Swede. He's on loan at Parma from Atalanta. And Atalanta's youth team is flying. Like, with Kulusevski in the side last season, they won the Primavera, which is the championship for youth teams in Italy, for the first time in 21 years. And he got 9 goals and 12 assists in 19 games. So far this year, first season in the top flight, he's been equally impressive. He's got 3 goals, 5 assists in 14 appearances so far this season. A little ahead of his expectation of 6, but still very, very strong. So far, he's been linked with Inter, Arsenal and Spurs. But I actually think he'd be a good fit for Man United. Or maybe even if Man United were to go for Sancho, he'd be a good replacement for Sancho at Borussia Dortmund.
Okay.
He plays off the right mostly. He can also play on the left. He's played in the middle as well. And he's left-footed. He's a big guy too. I mean, he's Swedish. He's a big guy. And I just think that United have a lot of forwards, but no real creators in that forward line.
I know what you mean.
You know, like Martial is fundamentally like a goal scorer. Rashford is a goal scorer. Daniel James isn't much of anything, but he's more a goal scorer than a creator. Pereira doesn't do anything, and Pogba's been out. So really, the only creator then you have left in the side is like Mata.
The only thing is you'd probably suggest that in January next summer they really try and sort out that midfield, which is really pretty turgid at the moment.
Yeah, but the thing is about this, like Kulusevski, yeah, he's not going to come cheap. Like 30 to 40 million is the rumour. But if you spend that instead of spending like 150 on Sancho, it means you can go out and buy 2 really expensive midfielders.
That's a good point.
You know, like I think there's this idea now that, oh, Man United have all this money, and because they kind of started that Galacticos thing when Van Gaal was there, they kind of got this idea of we only are going to buy world-class stars. And I think it's much more sensible for them to say, okay, we'll save a bit of money here on a guy who could be a star and looks like he'll be a useful contributor. And that way we can really solve some other things. And Ed Woodward has been talking this up. Oh, it's a 3 or 4 year project. It's really hard to get the right number of players through the door. This is one they could do quite easily. He makes 2.6 key passes a game. There are only 3 players in the United squad who average over 2. Pogba, who's been out all season, Lingard, who's barely played all season, and Ashley Young, who's 100
Really?
years old. And
Dead balls.
well, exactly. And so I just think, he's a decent dribbler as well, 2.4 dribbles a game. He's not particularly skillful though. He's more a kind of push it and go and rely on your power. So he's not a Sancho in that sense, but his output is kind of pound shop Sancho. So I just think, in an ideal world, I'd like to see him stay at Atalanta because I want Atalanta to compete for the Italian title the next couple of seasons. But failing that, I think that there is a real home for him at a team like Man United. And I do think a team like Man United need to start being more intelligent and stop, chasing after shiny things all the time.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Although Atalanta, I suppose, with Ilicic, sort of 31 now, Papu Gomez, similar age, it'll be interesting to see whether they decide to let him go at all. And Palmer will obviously be pretty keen to keep him even.
Yes.
Hwang Hee-Chan, though, is my suggestion. So the 23-year-old emerged at Pohang Steelers in his native South Korea before Red Bull's extensive scouting network spotted him, brought him to RB Salzburg. He then went on loan to FC Liefering, which is their feeder club in the Austrian second tier. Did very well there, and then has been a regular for Salzburg since 15-16.
It's a long time.
Yeah, I know, for a 23-year-old. So he scored 29 goals in 72 games across the 16-17 and 17-18 campaigns, before spending the 18-19 season on loan at Hamburg in the Bully 2, where things didn't really work out for him. So it was quite surprising that he hit the ground running so well this campaign. So in 13 Austrian league games, I should say, this term, he's got 6 goals and 7 assists. In 5 Champions League games, we're looking at 3 goals and 3 assists.
Wow.
And his 19-20 Champions League stats look absolutely incredible. 2.2 shots, 2.8 key passes, and 1.4 dribbles. So he's actually taking the same amount of shots as Yusuf Poulsen and Bobby Firmino, and he's producing the same amount of key passes as Serge Gnabry and more than Di Maria, which just goes to show how much this guy is lighting up the Champions League this term. He can either play alongside Haaland as a sort of foil for him up front or off the left. And the Metro claim that Arsenal and Man United have both been interested in him, or both are interested, I should say, along with a host of other top clubs, was their quote. Clubs moving from next summer should really try and snap him up as soon as possible, potentially even in January, because at the moment, Transfermarkt value him at just £4 million. They tend to negatively, what's it called? They tend to undercut their transfer value, so you'd expect that to be more around 20, 25, and especially with these Champions League performances, might well be more about 30, 35. But I think a lot of teams could do with him. I suppose Atletico Madrid looking for more creativity up front, Bayern Munich if they're looking for an additional winger that won't come at nearly the same cost as Leroy Sané. Someone like RB Leipzig if Timo Werner leaves even.
Timo Werner
if he lives. Which makes perfect sense as well, because Salzburg and Leipzig obviously have such a solid relationship going back years. And Napoli if they sell Insigne as well, which is the rumour as well. So Hwang Hee-Chan, one to look out for definitely, and one for the here and now as well. 23, really performing at Europe, in Europe and in Austria, I should say. So one to watch. Guys, that's all we've got time for on Presenter Picks. Let us know where you guys think our 2 suggestions should go. And Pat, what should they go do now?
We'll obviously check out Stat Wars from the last weekend, where you can see Chris Hamill having the time of his life. And don't forget that there will be the final of that coming up this weekend, where I take on Dave Jackson. Exciting times.
Very tight indeed. And this will be going out at a similar time as the podcast. It should have just gone live just a couple of hours ago. So go download that. It was Pat, George and Joe. Thank you very much for watching, guys. See you later.